Welcome to Valley Newsline for the week of November 26, 2006. Hello, I'm your host Ron Whitlock, coming to you from the McAllen Economic Development Corporation, McAllen Foreign Trade Zone in Hidalgo County with the President CEO, Keith Patridge. Welcome to the program, Keith.
It's nice to be here, Ron.
Now, Keith, the entire state and the Texas legislature is going to be going through all kinds of machinations, matching of teeth, trying to come together with some kind of an immigration reform from the state level. Not nearly as important, obviously, as what's going on at the national level, but there are state senators, state legislators who are trying to get into this play to some degree. So immigration, guest worker, and what can happen at the state level. Are you aware of what's going to be going on within the legislature coming up, and how important is it that the senators and state representatives understand the importance of South Texas and the Mexican border to the overall state economy?
Well, it's yes, Ron. What I've heard is just some of the advances on some of the bills that they're proposing, but they're all over the board, all the way from penalizing landlords for leasing space or apartments or dwellings to undocumented. Also then all the way from there to charging as much as an 8% fee on the repatriation of monies back into Mexico. And so it's all over the board. But what I really think that's important is that they recognize we need to really get back to the basis of what this whole immigration argument is about. And it's about the fact that the country's preparing to run into a real tight labor market because of the retirement of the baby boomers.
Pure supply and demand issue.
It's a pure supply demand issue. If you look at with the recent downturn in the economy, a lot of people were saying, well, why isn't the unemployment rate going up? The unemployment rate's not going up because there's not a lot of people out there. And so when the most of the companies now are just either laying off the people or giving early retirement to people who are close to retirement anyway. And it's going to be a significant issue not only for the United States, but Western Europe and even parts of Asia. I was in Korea about 2-3 weeks ago, and one of the things that I kept reading in the paper every day that we were over there was about how Korea was grappling with the aging population and who was going to pay for the health care requirements and the retirement benefits for the retirees, because they were running into a labor shortage of having people in the workplace. If you look at the United States right now, for example, there was an article in Forbes magazine here about a month ago, and it said that today in the U.S. there is a person hitting 60 years of age every 7 seconds. It said that in 3 to 5 years, 40% of the entire existing workforce will reach retirement age. Well, when you start looking at that and taking it down to an individual company level, it gets to be pretty serious, because it really becomes an issue of how does a company grow if they're going to lose or face the possibility of losing 40% of their workforce in the next 3 to 5 years. And that's where we're at.
Extraordinary.
It's extraordinary. It's something that the country really, we've had periods of tight labor markets before, but I don't think we've ever seen on a global basis this issue of having this huge baby boom generation all retiring at the same time.
With no generation to fill its place.
With a much smaller generation to fill its place, yes. And so as a result, we use that for our marketing efforts, because if you look at the border area of Texas, and as a matter of fact, the U.S.-Mexico border, not just Texas, but along the whole whole U.S.-Mexico border, you find a very young population base.
Eager to work, Tom.
Eager to work. In most cases, they're very eager to work. Many times they're
good work ethic.
They have a good work ethic. Many times they don't have the skill sets, and that's something that we're always constantly working on is skill sets. How do we get the skill sets that are going to be necessary to fill those jobs that will be coming because of the labor shortage that will be developed over the next few years in the United States?
President Clinton told Larry King on Larry King Live that the Mexican immigrant is not the problem. The Mexican immigrant is the solution. That's what you're saying. The Mexican immigrant coming in the numbers that they're wanting to come and fill jobs that Americans are not there to, not necessarily don't want to do. You're telling me they're not numbers adequate to do the jobs that need to be done.
That's exactly right. We had, let me give you a year ago, and this was, we started seeing this about 5 years ago because we had companies that were coming in to look at our area as a place to locate their business. And we noticed a substantial shift of companies coming down not to reduce their cost as much as it was because they couldn't find people where they were at now. And I started questioning, what do you mean can't find people? Is it skill sets that you're having problems with? And they said, no, we just can't find warm bodies. An example is there was a company that moved here from central Nebraska. And it was a company that had, I don't know, 150 employees, automotive supplier. Automotive industry started coming back. They got a new contract. They needed about 90 or 100 employees. They advertised in the paper, couldn't find anyone. They went to the workforce, entity or agency for the state of Nebraska and said, what's the problem? They did a quick research and they found that there were only like 60 people on the unemployment rolls in the whole service territory. So there wasn't enough people. Literally, if they hired everyone that was unemployed, there wasn't enough people to fill their requirements for their company. So they had to move. Well, they were moving so quickly, they ended up locating in a sister division's plant in Reynosa just because they had to fill the requirements of their contract, and they couldn't do it from Nebraska. And they closed the plant down there and moved it here. We're seeing that more and more where companies are moving because they can't find people where they're at now. It's not a question of skills as much as it is just warm bodies. And so what the Mexican immigrant is allowing us to do is to fill those positions with warm bodies.
Developing and creating more jobs than any other place in Texas faster. And how do you do that?
We work hard. we work hard.
Is it location, because you're so bright and your staff is so competent?
Well, I would like to say that's the case, but no, it's really a combination of a lot of factors. Number one is we have an excellent community to represent. We have an excellent group of citizenry here that is very supportive, and political leadership in McAllen is very supportive.
Basically international in scope in that you have a maquiladora, and that is a Mexican plant with a U.S. Texas component where the base, how does that work? Explain to the audience how it works quickly.
Well, when we started, when Mike Allen, of course, our former president, and myself started really looking at how do we build McAllen, the economy in McAllen, and when the MEDC was started, there were a number of things that we were supposed to do. One was to put the foreign trade zone into black. Two was to improve relations with Mexico, and three was to diversify the economy in McAllen. And so we really sat down, and this was back in 1988, and this was pre-NAFTA, this was pre-opening of Mexico, and we really sat back and said, how do we recruit companies to McAllen, Texas? At that point, it was not the center of the universe. It was, you didn't have to drive through McAllen to get to everywhere else in the United States. And so
predominantly in agriculture.
It was primarily agricultural and retail trade with Mexico. And retail trade had taken some hits because of the peso devaluation in Mexico. You remember it was devaluing on a daily basis, several pesos a day. And
especially going into the turnover of the presidential occupant of Los Pinos in Mexico City.
Yeah, and so at that point we really looked at what would cause an investor to want to locate or to invest in our area. And at that time, because of Mexico's fiscal troubles,
volatility,
we started looking, and we noticed that wages over there were running about 85 cents an hour, fully fringed. And within 3 months, they would be down to about 35 cents an hour in dollar terms because the peso devaluation. Then they would adjust the peso, and it would be up to about 85 cents or a dollar, and then it would be back down to 35 cents. And we said, the opportunity for cost savings to companies might be something that we really ought to focus on. So we went over and we met with the mayor of Reynosa at that time, a big rancher by the name of Ernesto Gomez Lida. And we said, we would like to become your economic development entity for the city of Reynosa. And so for the first 3 years, we focused totally on developing industry in Reynosa with the understanding that
realization
that as we developed a critical mass of these big manufacturing plants in Reynosa, we would also start creating a huge demand for the services and the service industry that it takes to support these manufacturing plants, in many cases on the U.S. side.
So give us a chronological for what happened then and what's happened now.
Well, so we started, and our assessment proved to be pretty successful. Over the last 18, 19 years, we've brought in over 500 companies, I guess close to 550 new companies on the U.S. side or Mexico side, and believe it or not, it's pretty well evenly split. Well, almost every year, when you go back over the 19 years, almost half of the companies are locating on the U.S. side, half of the companies on the Mexico side. Now, I will tell you, a caveat is most of the companies on the U.S. side have much fewer employees because the real cost savings in Mexico is the labor savings. And so we've been very successful. But what we've also found is those companies come in, manufacturing is one of those base industries. And from an economic standpoint, I don't want to get too deep into it, but the way you have to look at it is kind of like you're a person, a wage earner, and a paycheck. The money comes in, and you have a certain amount of money that you can spread around into the area. If you can't bring more money in from outside the community, the economy just becomes one of trading dollars. You're just trading your money. So you really have to look at ways to bring new money into the community. Manufacturing, the great thing about manufacturing and the reason manufacturing jobs are so valuable to a community is that when you bring manufacturing jobs in, money comes from everywhere else in the world into your community.
Your community's balance of trade, just like the
That's
national
right.
balance of
That's
trade.
right. You take that money that comes in, you convert it into products, and what goes out is products. Not money, but products that generates more money to come in and build more products to send out. And so the money that comes in from manufacturing stays here. The bulk of it stays here because you're shipping products out. You're not shipping money out. And so it's a very much a prize for a community, but it generates a lot of...
And the state of Texas.
And the state of Texas. One of the important things, I think, for the state of Texas, and something that I hope that the viewers will recognize, is the importance of the border area, both demographically, because if you look, the very young workforce, as companies, as you look economically, if you're a manufacturer in Chicago or Detroit or New York, and you're faced with a 3%, 2%, 3% unemployment rate, which many communities have right now, and you look at internally into your company and 40% of your workforce is going to retire or reach retirement age in the next 3 to 5 years, what are you going to do? where are you going to get those people?
Are the new workers that the plants are going to have to continue to operate in the state of New York? That was your scenario. Are they going to come to New York, or is that plant going to have to relocate here at the Texas-Mexican border and compete better with China?
Well, you know, all you have to do is apply rules of economics, and that is, if there's a guest worker program, then it's a question they can do a little bit of both.
Senator Cornyn and President Bush are both supporting.
But if you look at the standpoint of what happens if you have a supply-demand issue with labor, what's going to happen is labor costs are going to start going up. Because if you're bidding up for labor, then a laborer can go to a number of different options for a job, and you're going to be competing.
Supply and demand.
It's supply and demand. The beauty of it is, from our standpoint, what we really see as an opportunity for our area and for the state of Texas is that if you look into any community, there's two types of jobs. There's those that are tied to the location. That would be generally service jobs, hospital workers, schools, police force, restaurant workers, anything that provides service to the people who live there. You can't really do that remotely. You can't move that somewhere else and serve food in a restaurant or take care of people in a hospital. So that group of employers are going to either go out of business, or they're going to pay whatever it takes to get the people that they need to run their business. Well, what that then means is that the manufacturers in the area who are competing against China, who are competing against India, are either going to have to match the wages of that service-based or that local-based employer. They're going to have to match the wages or they won't get any employees. Or they can move. And what we really see happening, and it's been happening over the last 5 years, is those companies are looking at making a move to an area that has people and that has a cost advantage. Well, if you look in the United States, because of the baby boom generation, what are you going to do? Move from New York to another that has maybe a 4% unemployment rate to another location that has a 4% unemployment rate? Or are you going to move from New York to some place that has a young population, like the border area, and generally has a higher unemployment rate? So what we're seeing is those companies are beginning to locate on the border, or are looking at relocating their operation here on the border. If that happens, and the only thing that we see that could be to keep that from happening is the skill sets of our people.
Looking at transportation for the future here at the Texas border, I-69 was proposed to have 3 lanes, one going into Brownsville, one coming into far Hidalgo County, the other going to Laredo. Now the coastal area, Corpus Christi all the way to Port Brownsville, is trying to get I-37 extended. That's basically what they're trying to accomplish. Is that going to be important to maybe even completion of I-69, because now it's just two areas, Laredo and McAllen, trying to get the 2 lanes of I-69 completed? Are those things going to work together, Keith, in order to perhaps get TxDOT and the federal government to fund these 3 interstates into the region?
Well, I think that most of this, I think, is boiling down to politics. It's it's going to be whoever can convince the people with the money on which is the best location. I think realistically, if the state of Texas were really looking long-term at the process, they would probably end up building all 3, or they would plan for building all 3. That's where Mexico has really done, I think, an excellent job of looking at transportation needs. If you look at...
They've already completed State Highway 1, already complete on their side. When in your life has Mexico done something first?
Beat the U.S.?
Beat the United States.
Well, it's not very often that they do that, but
they're ready for the business. They're ready for the commerce.
Right.
They're ready for these 18-wheelers.
That's right. And they've been working on the coastal route for a number of years, but they always recognized that the border was the constraint. That's the small point in the hourglass is the border, because you're always going to have inspection, you're always going to have delay and things at the border. regardless of what they say about no stop, it's not going to happen, because as soon as you get technology, the people who are trying to do something bad will figure out a way around the technology. So you always have human intervention at the border, in my opinion. So what that means is that's a constraint. And so what Mexico has recognized is you bring the traffic from San Luis Potosi, Mexico City, southern Mexico, you bring it to the border. You don't try to push it through one bridge or one city. You disperse it at the border, and they brought the road up to San Fernando. At San Fernando, it splits to Reynosa. It goes east to Brownsville and east to Los Indios and to Nuevo Progreso. So you have all of these bridges that a truck or commerce can choose to cross. And then when they get on the other side, what do we want to do? Do we want to push them all back onto one road again? Or do we want to keep it dispersed on 281 and 77? And in my opinion, that's what makes sense. The future of business will not be determined based upon cost or location as much as it will be on speed to market and the ability to provide the customer with exactly what they want.
Speed to market. That's where the future of commerce is, and the future of business, and the future of the economy in Texas and the United States. Is that what you're telling me?
Yes, that's correct. Companies are figuring out, and U.S. companies are figuring out, that the way to compete against a low-cost area like Mexico, if Mexico were not next door, or China, or Vietnam, or India, or subcontinent Africa, which will be the next low-cost production area.
But is Mexico a competitor? Because now you have a symbiosis with Mexico and the United States right here at your economic and free trade zone here in McAllen, Hidalgo County, Texas. It's either losing these jobs, these products, this economy to China, or keeping part of it because you're cooperating and working together with Mexico.
That's correct. And what we, as I say, what we figured out is the way you compete against China, India, Vietnam, and other low-cost areas is using Mexico. But what companies have figured out is if I can get you as a customer to in some way order my product custom, color, features, packaging, any number of ways that you could order my product that I produce customized, or I can give you options on how you want it configured, and then I turn around and guarantee delivery within 24 to 72 hours, I've just cut China, India, Vietnam out of the marketplace.
And that's where your foreign trade zone comes into play.
Well, the foreign trade zone is important, but it really is this transportation issue that we were talking about.
Because all these components, maybe from China, will be assembled here in your free trade zone, then assembled and shipped out in 24 hours.
That's correct.
Benefit to Texas.
That's
benefit
correct.
to the economy of not only this region, but the entire United States.
That's correct.
Keith, thank you very much for being with us here on Valley Newsline. Until next time, adios.